You say the wedding. This Erusin spelled Aleph, Yud, Resh, Yod, Samach, Yud, Nun. Erusin. And the other one, the other word is Nisuin. So Erusin, today they use the word Erusin to mean to get engaged. But really, it's two parts of the process of marriage. And that is that years ago, before the Chacham, before the sages made the changes, when the person got married, the marriage consists of the husband giving a ring, the chassan giving a ring to the kala. And once they did that, they were considered married. And
without chuppah.
right. And then the Chachamim made that there's a second stage, and after the first stage, even though they're considered husband and wife, but they still should not live together as husband and wife, and they should have a preparation of 12 months before they get married. Each one should prepare what they need, and 12 months later, they did what we see at a chuppah. They go under a chuppah, they make 7 brachas, and then the yichud room. This is what constitutes chuppah. And what's the first part? Just the giving of the ring. So today when you go to a chuppah, you see both things together. They give the ring, and then they do the 7 brachas. But you'll notice they use 2 different cups of wine, once and a second time. And in the middle, we read the ketubah. The reason for that is to show that these are 2 separate proceedings. We'll make a break in the middle. But years ago, there was a whole year in between the 2. So Erusin is the first step of marriage, but it's not complete. And Nisuin is the final step of marriage. So one of the things that we find in reference to Shavuos and Pesach is that Shavuos, Pesach, and Shavuos are also one thing. But the Medrash says Pesach is like the first step of our marriage, and Shavuos is the final step of the marriage. Pesach is when we left Mitzrayim, and Shavuos is when we became Hashem's nation. And that's why it's the only Yontif, the only holiday that there's no date. Every holiday has a date. Rosh Hashanah is the 1st of the month, Yom Kippur is the 10th of the month, Sukkot is the 15th of the month, Purim is the 14th of the month, and Hanukkah is the 25th of the month. But and Pesach is the 15th of the month. The only Yontif that has no date is Shavuos. So what's the date for Shavuos? Is the 50th day of Pesach. I don't know if we brought this up in class, but if someone's traveling from a place like Australia, right, and you pass the date line, so when you come to America, your 50th day will be different than everybody else's 50th day. And according to certain opinions, halacha, which Chabad goes by that, you will be celebrating Shavuos on a different day than everybody else. Why is it so important, the 50th day? Because there's no date. How come this Yontif has no date? Every Yontif has a date. The answer is because Shavuos, in a sense, is not a Yontif in itself. It's really the culmination of going out of Egypt. The whole purpose of going out of Egypt was to become Hashem's nation. So it's really 2 steps. Going out of Egypt is step 1, and then 50 days later, it will finish the process. So that's why Shavuos is on the 50th day of Pesach. So based on that, a lot of things. Now going back to Mashiach, there's another medrash that says just like on a certain scale, the marriage was from Pesach to Shavuos, 50 days. On a much larger scale, we can say the following: Pesach and Shavuos were Erusin, first stage. When Mashiach comes, that'll be Nisuin. In other words, this is a much bigger break before the marriage. A break of almost 3,300 years to get ready to get married. So basically it means that the concept is the same concept. That just like Shavuos is the culmination of Pesach, and just like the second stage is not something new, is the culmination of the first stage of the marriage, so too Mashiach comes, it's not a separate thing. It's the culmination of going out of Egypt. Going out of Egypt was the beginning of the process, and going out of this Golus with Mashiach is the final culmination, the ending of the whole process. But the idea is the same idea. So therefore, when we say that Shavuos is the day of our marriage, so to speak, and then we say that Moshiach comes, that'll be the day of the marriage, the idea is the same idea, that on that day, our connection to Hashem, our oneness with Hashem will be perfect and complete. That's what it means. I just wanted to bring out a few interesting things about it. The fact that we'll say that what does it mean? That we're one, and it's also related to the name Shavuos. Why is this Yom Tov called Shavuos? Weeks. Why is it called weeks? We just finished counting 7 weeks. That's called weeks. But there's another reason I'm giving. And I wanted to tell you that other reason based on this. I didn't make enough sheets for everybody. Maybe today there is because nobody's here. I'm not nobody, Chas v'shalom. Whoever's here is not nobody. Sorry. You're the real bodies. The other ones, a lot of people couldn't make it today, so there's enough sheets. If you look at the sheet that I gave to you, what you're looking at is a page of Gemara. This is a page of Gemara. Let me do this again, just for the sake of knowledge. The commentary on the right side, who is that? Very good. The commentary on the left side, who is that? It's called Tosfos. I told you there was a yeshiva in France about 700 years ago, 800 years ago. They were mainly great grandchildren of Rashi, actually, and they also give commentary. The difference is Rashi's commentary is simple. Their commentary is much more scholarly and academic and deep and dialogue with questions and answers. Then there's other things on the side, which are other commentators. One of them, though, I put the arrow next to his name. His name is Rabbeinu Gershom Moshiach Geulah, which means his name was Rabbeinu Gershom, and he brought light to the Golus. And what's shocking is there's no other sage that has that name. And he was given such an interesting name. He brought light to the exile, and that's his title. And the rest is his commentary. So the question is raised, why did he get this title? Who's Rabbeinu Gershom? He lived about 1,000 years ago. And he lived in a city called Mainz. I think it's one of these places that sometimes belong to France. Sometimes I think it belonged to France, it belonged to Germany. It changed ownership. But he instituted a few gezeros, a few laws, so to speak, very strong things that affected the Jewish people in Golus. And because of that, he's called Rabbeinu Gershom. What did he institute? So there's a story. It's a very long story. It's actually a fascinating story. I'm not going to tell it now because we need more time, but I'll tell you the story, the brief part of the story. He's the one who instituted, even though according to Halakha, and it was actually practiced until his time, which is 1,000 years ago, a man could marry more than one wife. And basically, people did that. It wasn't very common, but people did that. They had more than one wife. And he instituted something, which is that it's prohibited for men to marry one wife. Even in those countries that permit it, from a Torah perspective, it's being prohibited. And he did something very, very harsh. He announced a cherem. Cherem means whoever will violate this should be excommunicated from the Jewish community. And not only that, there's a few things that he instituted, all under the same category. Whoever violates it would be, God forbid, excommunicated from the Jewish community. No one should deal with them, no one should have anything to do with them, no business, no marry their children. It's very harsh, and people therefore follow it. Why did he do this? Yes.
Who marries more than one wife?
Whoever marries more than one wife today. Unless people who were Sephardim, which were not under his jurisdiction, in certain Sephardic countries, married more than one wife because they weren't under his, he was Ashkenazi. But for those who are under his jurisdiction, that's a prohibition. It was based on a long story, and the story is printed, and if you ever saw it, I think that's the name of the book, Rabbi Majeski. But the bottom line is that there was a king, that his daughter was extremely sick where he lived. The king's daughter was very sick, and all the doctors gave up on her. And he was one of these Torah scholars that wasn't only like the Rambam, not only Torah scholar, he was brilliant in every area, in medicine and all other areas as well. And he told the king that he can heal his daughter, and he healed her. The king was very grateful, thankful. He made him as advisor, who knows taking advice. But unfortunately, this happened very often because the king was so in awe and impressed by him, and he gave him so much attention and honor. The other people who worked for the king were sort of jealous, and they plotted to find a way to bring him down. The king, seeing that he's very brilliant, said to him, I want you to make for me a throne like Shlomo HaMelech had. Did you ever learn about Shlomo HaMelech's throne?
We just started
Partially. Yesterday you heard about it?
Yeah.
How come?
Oh, yesterday on Jewish history class, we started.
Oh, we spoke about it?
No.
So he had a throne, which is no way we understand how it worked in those days. Today with electricity, it's not a problem. But every step you stepped on, the step lifted him, and the step had different animals. And then when he got on the throne, there was another animal on top that put a crown on his head. Everything was done automatically, but no one knows how he did it. There was no electricity then. There was no way of doing these kind of things. But Shlomo HaMelech, in his wisdom, did something like that. And he said, you're very smart. You can probably do it too. Anyway, he built him such a throne. And of course, the king was very excited, and his enemies were beside themselves. This killed them. They couldn't take it. So what did they say to the king? They said to the king, building this throne required a lot of gold. And they said he stole gold for himself personally while he worked on the project. And he denied it. And there was no way to prove it. Why? Because the only way to prove it is to take the throne, which is very big and heavy, and then have it weighed, to weigh it. And then you'll see if the amount of gold was used for the throne or it's missing. But no one knew how to weigh such a thing. Who did know? He himself would be the only one that would know. Because he's so smart. But he wouldn't tell them how to weigh it because that's just going to be used to put him down. What happened was he had no children. And his wife suggested that what they did in those days was to marry another woman, like Avraham Avinu did, and he'll have children from another wife, second wife. So under his wife's suggestion and his wife's urging, he married another woman. But this woman wasn't as righteous as the first woman. And in fact, they used her to find out from him the information. She gave it over to his enemies, and they used it against him. But they waited and they showed the reason is the truth is when you do work with gold, a lot of it gets lost in the work. But they accused him that he stole it. And of course, the king bought the story, and the end result was that the verdict was that they're not going to kill him, but they locked him up in a tower, a very high tower. There's no way to get out, and he would starve to death. That was it. There's no way to get him out. So that's what they did. What happened was that he was in this tower. There was a little window all the way on top. Why they made a window there, I don't know, but there was a window there with bars on it. But it was like a few stories high. And one day, while he's there, he wasn't there too long. He heard someone crying, and he sees his wife is there, his first wife. And she said she came to die with him. Her life was not a life anymore. She wants to just be next to him. So he said, no, you're not coming to die. You're coming to live. Let me tell you what to do. It's a brilliant story. You have to know the details. He told her, I need 4 things. And if you give me these 4 things, I can escape. And we can both live. He needs a worm. He needs a silk a silk thread, and then cord, rope, and then heavy rope. And I think also he wanted something that can file, cut the bars with it. So what's the connection? What she did was took a worm by her instruction, tied something to the worm what the worm likes, a certain food. So the worm is moving towards that food, but it's on top of its head. And as soon as it moves, the food goes further. So this worm kept moving and moving and moving until it came to the window, right? Now the worm was tied to a silk thread. So now he had the silk thread. He told her to this silk thread, she would tie a light rope. Now he has a light rope. With the light rope, she was able to tie a heavy rope. And he had this knife, this something to file and cut the thing. So he cut the bars, and then with the rope, he made a ladder out of rope. And he went out the window, and he escaped, and he went to a different country, and he survived. And after this incident, he came up with this ruling that a man should not marry to a woman. Now people think, oh, he had a hard time in his marriage, same that everybody else is miserable. No, that's not what it is. Basically, like all other halachas, spiritually people are going down as the generation is moving forward. So he saw that we're living in a time now that there's so much more jealousy and envy. Obviously, the second wife was jealous of the first wife, and that's why she did what she did. But the truth is, the first wife was a righteous woman, and the second wife was not. So basically, we're living in a time now that years ago it could work such a marriage, and today it does bring a disruption. Yeah.
But what about like previous generations? We are saying this, we have one zivug and the sheretz. So it's been like the first one was zivug or they're all.
It wasn't first and second; they were both married to both. Obviously, their neshamas were all connected. I don't know how it worked spiritually. I'm not sure. But in those days, it's like Yaakov had 4 wives. You know,
Right.
in those days, this was something which were 2 wives. But in those days, this was something which was again not common for everybody. It wasn't a common thing.
Right.
But in such a situation, there was no children, so they had the second wife, or for some other reason. But according to Torah, this was an okay thing to do. Once people became weaker spiritually, and more or less refined personalities and characters traits, and therefore people were more angry and jealous. So 2 wives turned out to be a lot of jealousy, a lot of fighting, and therefore he said we shouldn't do it anymore. Yeah.
So are we considered like today that we're spiritually we got weaker?
Yeah. So it says this is one of the reasons why they say he's called the one who enlightened the Gullus, because this decree that he made avoided and prevented a lot of fighting. So people say, okay, it's a nice thing, but there were so many other things that other great rabbis did. Why does this get so much credit more than anything else? He also made another decree. According to halacha, according to pure halacha, if a man gives his wife a divorce, and she doesn't want to get divorced, and he gives it to her against her will, according to halacha, it's valid. It is valid. So he made a takana, which will be instituted, that if a man gives a wife a get against her will, it's not valid. She has to do it willingly, to agree. Okay, that also helped a lot. But still not, why is that a reason why he got this title? There's still so many other good things that many rabbis instituted, and they don't have that title. So this is the explanation. Based on what we said before, that Hashem and the Jewish people are like husband and wife. So what happens when the wife is not loyal to the husband? That's what Gullus is about. Why are we in Gullus? Because we weren't loyal to Hashem. People did Avodah Zarah or other things, and God forbid, what happens in such a situation is that you're destroying the relationship. And that's why Hashem put us into Gullus. So there's a possibility that Hashem might decide, if that's the case, then if this wife is not loyal and she's not really what she's supposed to be, so I'll divorce her. What did he do? He made a halacha. And Hashem is bound to the laws of Torah as well. He made a halacha that a man can divorce his wife against her will. And basically, no Jew wants to be disconnected from Hashem, whether they know it or not, whether they say it or not. But deep down, a Jew wants to be connected to Hashem. So it's never really the true will of any Jew to be disconnected. So Hashem has no choice. He can't get rid of us. I'll explain it more soon. But there's another problem. Hashem might say, okay, I can't get rid of them, so I'll take another nation and choose them as my nation, and I'll have two wives. They made another halacha. That a man can't marry more than one wife. So Hashem is now stuck. He can't get rid of us, and he can't get another nation. Of course, we're saying this in humor, but it's not so simple. Why am I saying that's so simple? One of the reasons why Shavuos is called Shavuos, Shavuos has another meaning. Anyone know what else Shavuos means? Shavua. Think of Tanya, the first line in Tanya.
Oh, so what?
The first line in Tanya. Tanya, what's the first line? No, that's the introduction of Tanya. What's the first line in Tanya? That before a baby is born, there's an oath that I'll be a tzaddik and I'll be a Rasha. The word for oath in Hebrew is shvur. Mashbi'in, I say, that's how Tanya begins. So what does it have to do with this yontif? Well, that Matan Torah, Hashem took an oath that you will be my nation forever, for all of eternity. We took an oath that you will be our God for all of eternity. So basically, we made a commitment that's that cannot be canceled. It's binding for all of eternity. So really, what if he wouldn't have done these halachas? Hashem would, and nevertheless not has to get rid of them. What it means to say is that by making the halacha that way, it brought out, because Golus is a time where we're not the way we should be, so there was a need to bring out more openly that unconditional commitment from Hashem to us and the unconditional commitment of us to Hashem. You follow? Is it clear or not? What? I'm saying it's not that if he wouldn't have made this halacha, then Hashem would say goodbye. It means there is the connection between Hashem and us is unconditional. The connection between us and him is also unconditional. But we're making that halacha, it sort of brings out this unconditional commitment and connection in a more open way. And when do we need it? Need it now. But in other words, as the Geulah became more difficult, that's what we needed it, to reinforce our connection with Hashem, even under these circumstances. And by the way, that it also explains why Sephardic Jews weren't under that. What did they do? They also were in Geulah. And the answer is their Geulah was never as severe as the Geulah of Jews in non-Sephardic countries. It was never as severe physically, and it was never as severe spiritually. Why? Because the Geulah in the other countries were basically under Christianity. Christianity is avodah zarah, is idol worship. And Sephardim is Muslim, and Muslim is not avodah zarah. So our Geulah was always more severe than their Geulah. And even physically, most of the stories of pogroms and expulsions and Jews were murdered and killed, Chmielnicki, this story, that story, it's all in these countries, not in the Sephardic countries. Well, in this period, but for the most part, it's only now that there's such a hate was coming from the Muslim community. But in history, there was never such situations with the Muslims as there was with the Jews in Europe. So basically, this is what the point was, to reinforce and bring out more openly. We should feel that unconditional connection to Hashem, and from Hashem's end, Hashem's unconditional love for us should be more revealed, even in the time of Geulah. But that's why it's called Moshiach Geulah. So it's not just because he instituted something very powerful, very important. This is specifically important for the Geulah, that during Geulah, our relation with Hashem would be solid and strong, and it wouldn't be compromised. And one of the things that are also important to know is that this idea that every Jew deep in his heart loves Hashem is really a Hasidic concept. And it's found in Tanya, in chapter 18, 19. You don't find this in Gemara and other places. But there's one source, which is not Hasidus, not Kabbalah, pure halacha, and that's the source that says exactly the same thing. Where is that source? Rambam. Rambam writes, he writes in also laws pertaining to divorce. That let's say there's a situation where a man is obligated to divorce his wife. Let's say he's abusive and she's demanding to be free. She can't take it. Of course, he's obligated to divorce her. And he refuses. What do the Bezin do? So they force him. But if you force someone to give a divorce, it's not valid. That's already not even valid from the Torah perspective. So the answer is you force him until he says, I want to do it, I want to do it. Once he says, I want to do it, he gives the divorce and it's okay. So the Rambam asks, but we know that it's not real. He doesn't really want to do it. Stop twisting his arm and he'll say, I don't want to do it. So this is the Rambam says these words that every Yid wants to do what the Torah wants him to do. If the Torah says that he has an obligation to divorce, then that's what he really wants. It's the other way around. His Yetzer Hara is forcing him to go against his true nature, which is really amazing and incredible. That one of the cornerstones of Chassidus is right there in the Rambam as a regular halacha. And what's also amazing is the words you force him until he says, I want to do it, is found in Gemara, it's in Rashi and Chumash, but nowhere does anybody explain it until the Rambam came along and he explained it this way. Yeah.
So what's the halakha the Rambam saying every Jew wants to do what the Torah wants to do? What's the halakha specifically?
That he's forced to do it, and even though forcing it makes it invalid, by saying the words I want, it becomes valid.
Right, but did he base every Jew wants to do it first? Was that a halakha?
That's an explanation to the halacha. The halacha has always been there, but the explanation was not written anywhere.
The halakha, I can't remember.
The halacha is that if a man doesn't want,
Got it, okay. That's okay.
and not only a divorce, there's other things
So
also.
the specific halakha made this.
The halacha is that if someone's obligated to do something, and then it's a case where then they don't want to, but they have to, so the Jewish court of rabbis will force him until he says the words, I want to. But it's never explained why is that valid. And he gives the explanation. Yeah. So that's another reason for Shvuah. It means an oath. Hashem took an oath. In fact, again, like in a marriage, where they call it exchanging oaths or renewing our oaths. It's a marriage is an oath that each side says, I will be devoted to you and loyal to you unconditionally. And that's what Hashem and the Yidden did by Matan Torah. And of course, to be ready for that, we have the 7 weeks of Sfiras Omer, where we're preparing ourselves and getting ready and so on. Just there's a list. I just want to give you another example of something people don't know. I just want to explain that few minutes. So how do you understand this? His wife gave him a hard time, and therefore he goes and makes a provision for everybody else. So what I explained to you is what happened to his wife to him was just a sign of decline, how low, that right now he sees that we have came to a certain point that's low. It's like, I'll give you an example. Let's say someone had a bruise in his hand and it's there for a few days. And then one day he sees that it's very red. And the doctor looks at it and says, oh, it's so red, you need antibiotic. But why does he need antibiotic? Because it turned red. No, the redness is an indication that whatever is there, the infection has advanced and progressed to such a point that it must have antibiotic. The fact that this happened with his wife, to him, was an indication where people are at in our generation. And therefore, he said, now is the time we have to institute things. One of the things he instituted was, he instituted that if there's an envelope that's sealed and it's written to a specific person, anyone who opens it up should be excommunicated. In other words, you're not allowed to open an envelope that's designated to somebody else if it's sealed. reminds me of the story that Dr. Feldman, there was a doctor in the neighborhood called Dr. Feldman, that he worked with another doctor, a woman, and he told her about a certain problem she should write to the Rebbe. And she told me, the Rebbe never answered me. And I said, I don't understand. How could it be? Next time I'll be by the Rebbe, I'll ask him. And he says to the Rebbe that this doctor told me that you never answered her. The Rebbe said, I never got a letter from her. So he said, I personally gave it to you in my hand. I gave you the envelope. The Rebbe pulls out the envelope from a drawer. And on the envelope it says, Dr. Feldman. In other words, she gave it to him, that he should give it to the Rebbe. But on the envelope, it doesn't say the Rebbe's name, it says his name. The Rebbe said, I can't open a sealed envelope. It's not on my name, right? I think part of the story was that he sent information in a sealed envelope and she opened it. I think that's part of the story. But there's more things that instituted. It's all under this title. It's called Cherem Rabbeinu Gershon, the excommunication of Rabbeinu Gershon. You probably haven't seen it. It's not very common to see, but you ever see how when you have to send something to college for a job, you have to seal it, and over here you write something so they know that you didn't open it. So people write sometimes on a sealed envelope this acronym, Ches, Nun, whatever, Cherem Rabbeinu Gershon. Don't dare open it up. Okay.
But isn't that decree or whatever he said, like to have one wife? I heard that it was for 1,000 years, and that like the time was up. So what happened? Can men now like freely like marry women?
I don't think there's any Rav today that's going to say men should marry two wives. I guess he knew that Moshiach is coming now. By now, Moshiach will be here, so he gave it for 1,000 years.
What about Sephardim? Didn't apply to Sephardim, but they could.
If they live in a country legally it's permitted, they actually to this day they would marry two wives. Yeah, I think Morocco is one of those countries.
Yeah, Baba Sali had more than one wife.
What?
The Baba Sali.
Baba Sali was a very big tzaddik. He had more than one wife.
Wow.
Yeah. So I just want to conclude. The idea of preparing marriage to Matan Torah is because the principle is the same principle that the stages of marriage, and then like when people get engaged, they're connected. That's not a complete connection. When they do the first stage of marriage, they're also connected, but not complete connection. When they go into the chuppah, then it's a complete connection. But the truth is, for the rest of your life, you're connecting stronger and bonding more. In a sense, that's what happened here. Before the Torah was given, godliness and the world were not connected. We weren't connected. When Hashem gave the Torah, there was a connection. And then, when Hashem, then everything that happened throughout history brought that connection, even though we had ups and downs, but in general, the connection only became deeper and deeper and deeper. And when Mashiach comes, the connection is going to be complete. That's why we'll be able to see openly with our eyes godliness in a very open way. Yeah.
Our animal soul, just like we can raise sparks, or actually the sparks are risen, but receive the blessing. When the cow can receive it.
Right.
So our animal soul can be made holy.
Right.
And that's our work. That's
Right.
transformation here.
Right. Okay, good Shabbos, everybody. And enjoy the Erev Chodesh Sivan, and hope that Rivka will make. She's going to represent you all, so hopefully it'll be very successful. Yeah, all the best.
Yeah, just want to get all the us is the one. What? If you want, you can understand, you can go with my own.
No, so everyone would. What is why there are food?
No, we'll come back here.
No, we are waiting for everyone. First, with pallets, dips, pallet. Main first, everyone buying bar, no.
No, my suggestion, just to buy for everyone,
Потому что все ходят разное мясо, все ходят разное основное.
Что? Кому разное?
У них там разные вещи. Пожалуйста, можно
I like that's what we're talking about. I actually was gonna get a second.